Today, my guest is none other than Dr. Carter Phillips. Carter is a doctor of physical therapy. He is an elite soccer athlete and a flexibility and mobility specialist on the dance floor. Without further ado, Carter, how we doing today?
Brad, I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, hey, great to have you on. What a privilege. The doctor's in the house.
Doctor is in.
So, physical therapy. Talk to me a little bit about, so what does that entail? What does that look like?
Yeah, so physical therapists, we define ourselves as like movement specialists, essentially.
Okay.
And movement specialist is kind of a broad term, right? Because you could, kind of imagine there are a lot of different careers that, see themselves as movement specialists, whether it's strength and conditioning coaches or, kind of other people in the wellness industry. But we do like to hang our hat on the fact that we specialize in movement, not only like analyzing movement, looking at movement, but like correcting movement potentially, and then using movement and specifically using exercise to aid in just recovery from injuries, reducing pain, kind of improving just overall like functional ability. So big picture, that's what physical therapy is.
Okay, I like that. So a couple things that I thought of, one thing in particular that I thought of when you were going through is talking about like the responsibilities and the role of a physical therapist is I feel like in the gym setting, a lot of exercises, a lot of physical therapy exercises that get watered down. And I feel like they're almost Band-Aids on bullet holes. So talk about how you actually how you address and fix people's movement patterns.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious first. Give me an example of that.
Okay.
Tell me like a physical therapy exercise that is a purely, or is seen as maybe just a Band-Aid.
Okay, yeah. And I would use Band-Aid in the sense you're like, oh, my shoulder hurts. So I'm going to do, for example, I'm going to reach up, I'm going to put a band on a bar and then I'm going to pull down on it.
Okay.
And I'm going to do that. And this is going to give me, maybe it's a little bit of lat activation. And so people, the Band-Aid part comes more from people not really understanding fully like what the exercise is for.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And so, and the hard part is there's so much out there nowadays, right? Like you can go on YouTube or Google and say like, I have shoulder pain, what should I do? And there are like hundreds, if not thousands, of people out there who will give you advice. Oh, do X, Y, Z if your shoulder hurts, or just give you like lots and lots and lots of different opinions about it. There's some pretty strong evidence that exercise can definitely improve pain, improve function for sure. Specific exercises will work better for specific people though, and that's the hard part, right? Is because it really truly should be an individualized approach, in the sense that like take two people with like, let's kind of run with the shoulder example, right? Yeah. Two people have shoulder pain. You can have a guy who's maybe like a 300-pound lineman or something, college athlete, right? He has shoulder pain, right? But maybe he has like restricted mobility. He has, decreased range of motion of his shoulders, certain things that say like a gymnast would not have, right? That gymnast is like hyper flexible. She won't have the same issues that this 300-pound lineman will have. So it shouldn't really just be a blanket approach. And I think unfortunately physical therapy in some regard has gotten kind of a negative reputation because people go to physical therapy and physical therapy doesn't work. And I think the tides are changing, which is good, but there are still places out there where you go for physical therapy and you have back pain. It's like, here's your cookie cutter back pain exercises, right? Everybody gets the same thing, no matter who you are. And that's really not the way that it should be done. So in regards to physical therapy exercise, specifically in like just a fitness space, I think it absolutely has a place. I think it just has to be the right things given to the right people, potentially at the right time too, like in season, preseason, out of season.
Okay. From the athlete perspective, what makes a good physical therapist versus a bad physical therapist?
Good question. I think my mind's very like evidence-based essentially. There's tons of research out there on all this stuff, and I kind of nerd out on it. So I'll try not to go into the weeds too much. Yeah. But a good versus a bad physical therapist. I think a good physical therapist, number one, takes the patient's specific like wants, needs, concerns into consideration. Okay. There's a lot of like really good evidence that if you develop what's called a therapeutic alliance, what that means is like You come in as a patient, you feel like you're being heard. I understand like your needs, and we developed kind of like a relationship in a sense, like a professional relationship, but a relationship in the sense that you really believe that I have your best interests in mind, and I completely understand you as a person, right? So there's some really good evidence that developing that therapeutic alliance can go a long way to improving outcomes in people with pain or with injuries. For example,
that, the therapeutic alliance. That's
right?
a great term.
Yeah, it's a good one. I take no credit for that. It's a term that's been around for a little while. But for example, like they did this study, right? And in this study, there were two physical therapists who did the same like manual technique. Let's say it was like massaging like your upper trap or something for someone who has neck pain, right? And I can't speak to the exact technique. I don't remember it. But it was some kind of hands-on technique where they're working on tissue flexibility or something. So there's one group of people where the physical therapist just walks in, doesn't say a word to the patient, works on that specific muscle, and walks out, right? And then there's another group of people where the physical therapist walks in, right, has a full conversation with the patient, kind of gets to know the patient a little bit, develops a little therapeutic alliance, and then does the same manual therapy technique where they're, again, working on some kind of soft tissue or something along those lines, right? Some kind of massage or something. The group that had a therapeutic alliance, or the group that really like felt like the physical therapist cared about them, understood them, did significantly better in terms of outcomes and like pain and disability and function, all these things. So that is like number one, the first thing that makes a big difference is I think a physical therapist's ability to just like care about the person, communicate with the person, and make sure that specific person is understood. Past that, there's a lot of technical stuff that you can do well, and then that isn't always done well in terms of exercise prescription and manual therapy and all these other things. But at the fundamental level, that therapeutic alliance makes a huge difference.
Yeah, that's a great. That was a fantastic example of I mean, like just actually caring for people.
Yeah.
And so talk about like what role does your faith play as a physical therapist?
Yeah, my faith I think definitely plays a role in certain ways. It's so in that therapeutic alliance, right? If someone comes in, and in order to develop that alliance with you as a patient, say you're not a believer, say you're a Muslim or an atheist or whatever it is, right? And I eventually start like kind of pushing my faith values on you as a person, right? Then that, if anything, that might like tear down your therapeutic alliance, right? Yeah. So I think there's a fine line to draw between being a little too forward with certain like faith-specific things. Personally, what I do is I just make sure the person feels cared for. Yep. And I try to the best of my ability, just exude and practice, just with Christian principles in mind. Yep. And at a certain point, sometimes I've had it happen over the years, people ask you, hey, Carter, like, you seem like, and I'm not tooting my own horn by any means, but they say, man, you seem super nice, you're always happy, you got a good family, like, what's your secret, and maybe not those words specifically, but eventually, like, maybe that segues into something. And I have to really just choose my words carefully in a professional setting, but there are other ways that I think you can demonstrate a Christian example.
Absolutely. Our lives and our profession too what more is our profession other than the platform to share our faith?
Correct.
And especially with our being married to one woman, having children, like a mother-father relationship, and then having that is just truly what a testament to. I mean, just you're being a normal guy, and you're like a normal Christian guy. You're like, this is what I do. And people see that. People notice that, because joy is so hard to find nowadays. And then people with like happy family lives, which is really sad, but that's like, for sure, that's our role.
And that's an interesting. You mentioned happy family lives. So physical therapy, right? We do treat pain. We are pain specialists in a sense as well, because people come here because they're in pain. Otherwise, they don't go to physical therapy. Nothing hurts. Like, I don't need to go there, right? Yeah. So we do absolutely have a specialty in recognizing pain and treating pain. And again, it becomes very nuanced, because pain's a weird thing. For example, pain in its kind of more like primitive sense is really something that's designed to protect you, right?
Pain. Okay.
Yeah. So say I put my hand on like a hot pan on the stove.
Yep.
Immediately I feel pain, and my brain says, "Hey, this hurts. Take your hand off the stove."
Yep.
Right. And that's protecting me from damaging my hand. Right. But sometimes it's not that simple. Sometimes people have back pain or neck pain or whatever it is, right? But back and neck specifically, there's a pretty big tie to like your emotional well-being, your like mental well-being. Like lots of other factors can play into your pain experience. There's another like fun example we use where it's like, people have back pain, and sometimes people have like structural issues, like there's a disc bulge and a nerve root impingement, or like a muscle strain, like true muscle tissue damage that can cause pain, and those are very real, right? But sometimes it's not quite as clear, and like if your back hurts, Brett, for example, imagine you're walking down the street, your back hurts, and you get a phone call and they said, "Hey Brett, like you just won the lottery."
Yep.
Like in that moment, I'm not feeling a lick of pain, right? I don't feel anything, because all I can feel is like joy. I'm just happy, all these things. So that's just an example of how like your emotional state can affect how you feel pain. And that's something we kind of have to
How do you balance
engineer and navigate? It's interesting, right?
Being evidence-based and then like balancing with because it's easy to get, like folks get worked up with their emotions all the time.
Absolutely.
And how do you balance
and so
that?
I do my best not to like really like dive into waters I shouldn't be, right? Because you can very easily like open the door to become like an emotional therapist, and that's not my role. My role is not to counsel you on your life or your family or anything like that, right?
Right.
But to tie it back to therapeutic alliance, it's like, can this person at least just feel like they're being heard or understood? Can I give them some pointers on like evidence-based things? It's like, hey, like, I don't know how much you exercise during the week. If you're a little more like sedentary, for example, like, getting out, taking some walks, find a community, talk to somebody. Don't just watch TV all day, like maybe like get some good sleep. Like I can maybe counsel them on some things that could affect how they feel on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, you have to be careful not to dive too deep into the weeds of like emotional trauma and family issues. It's a fine line to walk sometimes, but it's an important one. Yeah. And that's for people who maybe don't have as much like tissue specific damage or things. But it can happen to like athletes. Like athletes have like multiple injuries, multiple surgeries, stuff like that. Like it's pretty easy to get like down in the dumps pretty fast if you're recovering from surgery. You can't play your sport, you can't do all of these things. So it's not just the sedentary people who we have those conversations with. Sometimes it's like the higher level athletes who are starting to get a little discouraged in the rehab process because it can be long.
Oh yeah, I used to think it was very. I never realized the older I get and the more advanced I go as far like in the training profession, I understand more and more how interrelated everything is. So for example, I used to think like gut health, I'm like, that's a little, but the gut is like it's like the real deal.
Pretty serious
and
stuff.
How it like links up.
Oh,
and then,
for sure.
And especially like with your emotions and things like that.
Yeah.
And I do think it's important to, because it's easy to use the emotions and like what's going, like the stress as the stick man. And I feel like a lot of folks and like not to take anything away from like folks with like mental health issues, but I feel like that's an easy stick man to be like, oh, I'm just, it's like
depressed.
I just don't feel like doing something.
Yeah.
And you're like,
yeah.
Okay. But
so
how do you balance a career as a physical therapist and being a husband, working out, playing soccer, being a dad? How do you balance all these things? Jumping off of not making excuses is like, how do you take care of yourself? Like, what are you doing for?
It's hard. Life's not easy for anybody, right? But yeah, like I'm a new father.
Congrats, by the way.
Thank you. I have a career that keeps me very busy. Got a wife, got a family. So it's tough. And finding time to exercise now is not what it used to be.
Yep.
I didn't realize how much free time I had until I had kids, and I think other people would probably say the same thing. So yeah, it's definitely, you have to be more intentional about it. What's nice is in my job, it's like I move most of the day, which is helpful in a sense, but that's not enough to like keep me fit, but it's enough to kind of like at least just like keep my body moving well enough, and my body's feels okay most of the day because I'm not sitting down like at a desk or something.
Sitting is the new smoking,
It can be, yeah. Yeah, it's going that way.
That's right. The real epidemic.
Yeah, so you just have to be intentional. Have to be intentional about when you work out, where you work out, how you work out.
Okay.
I can't go home from work and like go straight to the gym for an hour and a half and then come home like in time for dinner, because when I get home, my wife's smoked and tired, and she says, "Hey, can you hold the baby for a minute? Like, I would love to take a shower. And, like, I'd love to go to the gym, but like, it's you have to really like prioritize a little bit.
Yeah.
So you have to be intentional with it, and whether that's like getting up in the morning or I'll take him for walks in the stroller, and I'll just hustle hard up hills and do some lunges in between, and just kind of like find pockets of time really to exercise.
That. Yeah, that's good. So lunges up the hill.
Yeah, when I can, walking lunges, pushing
with the
stroller.
Man, with him,
with the little guy. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
So it's like you kind of have to get creative. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but just like you have to get creative, because it's just like that's the phase of life that you're in. And dad bods are real, and they come for everybody.
That's right. Yeah. He's always knocking at the door.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I took this morning I had Hayes and gave Chelsea a little more sleep. Woke up early, and he's great. He's real smiley, and read the Bible, and then I was like, you know what, we're gonna do it, because I wasn't gonna really have any time to really exercise.
Yeah.
And I could put him. Our gym's outdoors, and I could put him in a little stroller outdoors, but it was pretty cold, so I was like, he'll start crying, and he won't have a good time. I won't have a good time. So I carried him, and I just grabbed him, and then I just walked around and just walked up hills.
There you go.
And just got my heart rate up, got moving, feeling good. Made me feel good about myself, and you're like, that's it. That's all I give today.
Yeah, and that might be all you have today, exactly, right?
So you're like, well, I guess I'm going to call this a rest day.
Yeah. So
okay.
It's harder. It definitely takes more intentionality. No question about that.
What's your modality choice?
In regards to exercise?
Yes.
It's a mix of things, and it is influenced by physical therapy, I think.
Okay.
Again, I go back to like my evidence-based mind.
Yeah.
But I really like to get some kind of resistance training in a couple times a week. Yeah. And I've got a handful of dumbbells and things, and that is usually enough to do what I need to do.
Are you like a motivated to like work out type of guy?
I enjoy working out. I really like it.
Yeah.
I do enjoy working out. I enjoy how it makes me feel. I enjoy how I feel when I'm working out consistently.
Yeah.
Your motivation, it wanes a little bit when you have sleepless nights and those things that come with parenting. But I do enjoy working out, big picture. But yeah, I like to do some resistance training. I like to get my heart rate up and do some form of like cardiovascular exercise at least once or twice a week. And like those are really my big two things. If I get in 3-4 days a week at minimum, like I'm pretty happy.
Okay.
If I can get in more, take every chance I get. But that's kind of where I'm at right now in regards to fitness and.
Okay. Dumbbells, kettlebells.
Yeah, dumbbells, kettlebells, that kind of thing. Going for a jog. I still play soccer once a week at the moment.
You do.
So
like
that kind of thing. Yeah.
That's so back to with soccer. And you mentioned going to the gym for an hour and a half. When you started playing, because as a goalkeeper, what did you do for fitness before you went to college, while you were in college? Like what did you do as far as from a training fitness perspective?
Yeah, from a training fitness perspective in regards to my athletic career, I unfortunately think I missed the boat in my collegiate career. And I wish I knew what I know now about like strength and conditioning and power development and all these different things. Yeah. So I played, at Point Loma Nazarene University, and we were small, like Christian college, not a ton of funding for athletics. Yeah. We had a weight room, but it was kind of just like a weird broom closet.
That weight room
thing.
Sucked.
It was tough. Man.
It's better now, so
it is better. And I think they've invested quite a bit more in like the strength and conditioning. They have a strength and conditioning coach. They have all these things now.
Okay.
But anyways, when I was in college, we kind of had these programs that were written for us, and you're kind of on your own in the weight room. And as a college kid who like really didn't have a whole lot of like training in the gym about how to develop as an athlete, I was like, I guess I'll do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and I'll just go play, and then I'll like go run hills, and I'll do that kind of thing. So,
man, what an opportunity!
Opportunity missed.
Oh my gosh, yeah, an opportunity missed.
Yeah.
That's like, gosh. So, what advice would you give to young athletes?
Yeah.
Getting ready, like in high school, looking at the front end. So, like in high school, maybe like in college, getting ready to go to college. From a fitness perspective.
Yeah, I think
things you wish you would have done differently.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think it's and again, I think in today's world, it seems more accessible now in terms of like stuff you can find on the internet. But like what I wish I would have done and what I know now is really dedicating specific time to like strength and conditioning work, right? Like in the gym, under a barbell, like kettlebells, like really like getting the fundamentals down, especially if you can get the fundamentals down as like a high school athlete of like squat, hinge, like push, pull, like all of those kinds of things, and just build on that. Like you'll be a significantly better athlete when you like get to the collegiate level, right? Like those fundamental, like just movement patterns are so important for athletic performance. And like, those are things that like I picked up later in life and I developed a passion for later in life when I learned more about the body and the biomechanics of the body and how it works. But back then I was like an RDL, like a Romanian what? Like I was like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, you're like, what's Europe doing over here?
Yeah. Some European lift. I don't know what the heck this is.
Yeah.
So anyways, like I wish I had developed those like fundamental movement patterns and then started to load those as a high school athlete.
Yeah.
And then, you start loading those patterns as a high school athlete and then continue that in college. Like, man, I would have been such a better athlete than I was. And I was okay. I was good enough to be a scholarship athlete at the Division II level, but like I think about it, and if I had if I had the knowledge I had now, and I had invested more time into that component of my training as a high school athlete, like could I have played at the Division I level? Could I have done more with my athletic career? Probably.
Yep.
Right. But it is what it is.
Yeah. Man, that's okay. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. That's the load the movement patterns.
For sure.
That is, and I have a lot of, I work with a lot of like working professionals, and so I'll work with youth athletes sometimes, and that's the biggest, and most of the time whenever I'm first starting out with them is I'll put them under a stick, I'll just like getting them used to like certain movements, right? And you're just not even, and then you remember how it is. You're like 14, 15, and you're like, man, this is dumb. I want to be, I want to get under the barbell. And then I'll throw in Bulgarian split squats. I'll give them a set of dumbbells, and then we'll do like 3 sets of 10 or something. Yeah. And just light them up. And then they're just like, then they're like, they're just like Bambi walking around the gym. And a few other things. Not as like a nefarious type, but it's just you don't realize so going into, but like strength training specifically for your lower body, like how did that benefit you as an athlete, and especially because you're very explosive playing with you on teams, and you move really well. Yeah. As a goalkeeper, you're built differently from other soccer players. So as a goalkeeper, like the farthest distance I really will ever have to run is 18 yards to the edge of my like penalty box. Yeah. So I have to be quick and explosive and powerful in those short distances. Yeah. I don't need to be able to run like 5 miles straight. Yeah. Right. And again, I noticed this later in my career because I continued to play. I played at the semi-professional level for a year, but I played recreationally for my whole life. And that's part of what drives me to like exercise too, is when I'm working out, I play so much better. Oh, like, yeah, 100%.
So, so anyways, like once I started to put time and effort into that stuff, I was just like so much more explosive. I felt like, and I didn't specifically train this, but I did feel like my reaction times were quicker. You're getting to balls faster. You're stronger on the ball, like all these different things like that. It made a huge difference once that was incorporated into my world, into my regimen. Yeah. It's like it's like you drank a secret potion or something. Dude, it's the best feeling in the world. Like that feeling, and I feel like this feeling. That feeling where you run onto the field and you're like kind of like a couple like big jumps and you're like, man, I feel like springy today. Like I feel like explosive. Like that's a feeling that is one of the best in the world.
Oh my gosh. You're out there for a few minutes and you're like, I'm feeling good today.
Yeah, and you're flying around the field. It's like, man.
Oh yeah.
What a good feeling that is. Yeah. But that doesn't happen. And some people naturally have that, to be fair, but like even if you naturally have that, you can enhance that by just working at it. And it's just such a cool concept to believe that our bodies have the ability to do that and adapt to load and get stronger. And it's like, it's crazy.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Like, it's amazing. And you can appreciate this too, but you asked me about like my faith in physical therapy. Yeah. I'm like continually like monthly, weekly amazed at like what the human body can do.
Oh yeah.
And how it adapts to change either positively or negatively, right? Different ways it can change. But the ways that you can like improve it and the way it functions, it's just like, it is absolutely incredible. It's one of the reasons I love what I do, because like the human body is such a cool system.
Oh yeah.
I feel like you have that appreciation too, like working as a personal trainer and fitness and all that stuff. But
speaking specifically about prehab, is best defense is good offense. So we don't want to be reactive. We don't want to be reactive with most things in life. We want to be proactive, especially, most importantly, our health. We want to be proactive about our health. So strength training, evidence-based, right? You go into it and you have the opportunity to control all the variables when you're say you're in a gym setting, but when you're specifically training something. So for example, like if you're older and you like want to work on your balance, you can control variables, you can introduce proprioception and things like that. If you're trying to work with a young athlete who's trying to generate more power, you can work on that as well. But if we're speaking specifically about prehab, so certain, right, we know, like I also use like the secondary movers to have a tendency to take over. So for example, if somebody's doing some sort of a squat and their knee caves in, they probably need a little bit more. It's probably not necessarily their quad, it's probably a little bit more in their hip.
Okay.
And so when we're talking about, so prehab can be specifically like in the weight room, like most people don't have strong glutes. Right, so your glute med, right, preventing the knee valgus. So working on that's just like kind of an easy one.
Yeah.
And then you have like your your rear delt, teres minor, stuff for your shoulder, things that you can do where you have like certain ranges of motion for your shoulder. And I think also introducing like range of motion exercises where for like you're not shortchanging. For example, you're not just getting your body. If you're doing a shoulder press, you're not just here and here and just really like isolating small parts of the movement. So prehab, being able to, so when you are out, say you're like going on a hike, or say you're playing soccer and you're out there and you're moving around, you're not going to be as liable to get hurt because you're the muscles are strengthened in the kinetic chain and whatever you're doing. So you're going to be able to.
For sure. Yeah. So I think you hit the nail on the head for most of it. Prehab, the word itself, right? The prefix pre basically indicates that we're preparing for something, right?
Oh, so sorry, that I was meaning that more from injury prevention, but like if you're going to ACL surgery, is that what you were referring to?
But that's why it can mean lots of different things, right? Yeah. But I think let's don't even talk about ACL surgery. Stick to what you were saying, right?
Yeah.
It's like someone who like doesn't want to fall down at home. Yeah. Right? Someone's old, doesn't want to fall down at home. Or like someone's younger and it's like, hey, I want to play soccer better, and I want to play soccer and reduce my injury of like being hurt or something, right?
So you're
still preparing for something. Right.
Okay.
So it's not just prehab for an ACL surgery.
So you're a dad trying to play soccer on the weekends.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, right? Yeah, you're still preparing for something. So I think you hit the nail on the head though. And I think there's in terms of injury prevention, it gets a little nuanced at times, right? Because some things, and again, you alluded to this, is some things like are unavoidable, right? Like if you're playing soccer on like a grass field that's not very nice and you step in a gopher hole and roll your ankle, it's like, well, that's not preventable, right? So to a certain extent, yes, we can mitigate injury risk. And over the years, lots of things have been studied in terms of like risk factors and like things you can modify, like modifiable risk factors, and then certain things that are non-modifiable that just based on, your age and your tissue integrity and those things, it's like we maybe can't modify those quite as well to prevent injury. But in the context of exercise, you can certainly exercise and do lots of things to prevent injury down the road. So with prehab, in the physical therapy space, and there's a push right now to make physical therapy almost like going to the dentist, right?
I feel that a lot. I get that a lot.
Yeah. And so it's like, you go to the dentist for a cleaning every 3 months or 6 months, whatever it is, right? And then if there's something serious, they need to bring you in and treat it and work on it. So like physical therapy, they're pushing for something similar in that like, hey, we're going to look at your movement quality, like your mobility, your strength, these things, kind of give you some things to work on in the meantime. If there's something serious, you have an injury or pain, like bring you in for treatment. And I don't hate that model. I don't know how applicable it is in like an insurance-based world. Outside of that, it's certainly doable. But I think there's a lot of that can certainly be applied to like the fitness industry as well. So general exercise for most people absolutely is going to decrease the amount of pain you have. right? Pain and injury are a little bit different. But just general exercise, like say you're just maybe approaching the golden years of life, right? And you just like things just kind of hurt and ache and pain and stuff like that, and it's a little stiff getting out of bed. Like exercise is a great thing for you to do, right? It can certainly prevent injuries to the extent we're not quite sure,
right?
But yeah, strengthening, conditioning, doing a certain amount of mobility work is really a good thing.
Yeah. Hit me with, so while you're just speaking about mobility,
sure.
I get this all the time. People interchange flexibility, mobility. They think of it as like the same word. It's real shame.
No, that's
shame.
okay. Yeah, let's
and
hear
that's
it.
So with the amount of jargon that I hear around, I want to get more flexible. Can you speak? So keep it real simple. The difference between flexibility, being flexible, being mobile.
And it's semantics in a sense, because you can kind of use each word interchangeably.
Yep.
When I think of flexibility, I think of a specific tissue, right? Like hamstring flexibility. How far can I stretch this hamstring muscle, right? Yep. And then in regards to mobility, I think of in the physical therapy space, that's viewed as more of like a functional type, from a functional perspective, in the sense that like, hey, can I squat down to the floor and pick something up and stand back up? Right? Or can I reach to this top shelf and grab something and bring it back down? Right? Do I have the mobility to do those things? And it's, again, like I think you could expand on those definitions quite a bit.
Yep.
But flexibility, I think, is a little bit more, it's a more narrow view of how the body moves, right? Like how far can this joint move? How far can I bend backwards? Like that's flexibility. But I think mobility probably has more of a functional sense to it. Say, for example, you have like a yogi, right? Someone who just does yoga all the time, right? Incredibly flexible. They can bend down, put their hands flat on the floor. Yep. They're super crazy, like hyper mobile at times, like things hyperextend, and they're just more like mobile than other people. If they're in pain, more stretching is probably not the thing to do, right? Yep. It comes back to that individualized approach. And I think some people get a little too narrow in how they address things and maybe treat things. But in this regard, like that person, that yogi or that yoga enthusiast, whatever, they probably don't need more stretching, right? They're probably stretched out almost to the max, right?
Right.
They probably need some strength and stability to like stabilize all the joints, right? Because their muscles are stretched out.
Yeah.
You can make the argument that their ligaments are probably a little looser than someone else. But if you just say, you need to stretch more, it's like, no, you don't. Why would you?
Yeah,
right? You can do the splits 3 different ways. Like, why do we need to keep stretching?
Right.
And so that's where you have to give like more mobility and stability for those people, build some strength in the tissues around their joints to support them.
Right.
And then they'll probably feel a lot better. And again, conversely, right? We go back to that same example of like the big football player or like power lifter or whatever, right? Or not power lifter necessarily. They're usually good about mobility. But someone who just like lifts weights all day, right?
Yep. Bodybuilder.
Super big, like just bench press, lat pull downs, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
College guy.
Yeah, college guy is a good example.
Yeah, college frat guy. Yeah,
college guy.
Yeah. If you're a college frat guy, just
those
more
people
mobility.
who like all they do is lift,
Yeah.
and they're lacking in mobility certain places.
Yeah.
Absolutely, working on mobility and even some flexibility can make a huge difference for them, right? Wow. So again, it's like it's individualized to the specific person. But no, to answer your question, like mobility or flexibility is certainly not the answer for everybody.
Okay.
Mobility may not be either. It might be like stability or something else like that.
Okay. So you need a little bit of balance of both, but
certainly
strength and stability for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So with 3 pieces of advice you'd give to someone who's a fitness enthusiast who has pain. So as far as like somebody who wants to, that's again. I know you're going to say pain is very nuanced, and you're going to say everybody we got to take an individualized approach.
I love that you're listening.
That's a good. This is good. I knew the answer to that. Okay, so let me rephrase it. 3 things folks who are new parents or like in their 30s and 40s should be focusing on.
Yeah. So let's just
to stay out of your clinic.
Yeah. Let's just take like a younger adult who wants to like stay out of pain and just keep their body moving as best they can. because they got to take care of their kids and carry kids and pick them up and do all these things.
Right.
I think there's a couple different things, right? And it will be a little specific to the person, but regardless, right? I think maintaining a certain level of flexibility and mobility is super important, right? Your ability to just like squat down to the floor and stand back up. If you can't just like squat down to pick something up off the floor and get back up, like that's probably an issue.
Yeah.
Right? Why that's an issue, it's hard to say all the time, right? Because there's lots of things.
Yeah,
it's nuanced.
Yeah.
That's the thing with physical therapy too, is like whenever people ask a question, it's like, it kind of depends.
Like, oh, my knee
right?
hurts.
I can't give you a straight answer.
Carter, my knee hurts. What do I do?
Well, there's lots of reasons it could hurt. But it's like some form of like mobility work. It doesn't have to be like static stretching either, right?
Okay.
I think static stretching is something that like I feel like as growing up, and I feel like you got this too, but like in athletics and stuff, and you're just led by like your coaches and stuff. They'll lead you through a warm up, and you sit around. And
Static stretching was huge.
Static stretching was like, I feel like it was like what we did, and that was our injury prevention. It was like, oh, you're not stretching enough, that's why you got hurt.
It's like the worst to do that before working out.
Well, yeah, it's like, again, like statistically proven, you're gonna decrease your power output in those muscles you just stretched for at least the next 10 or 15 minutes, right? So if I go and stretch my hamstrings and hold it for 30 seconds or a minute, whatever, then I stretch my quads and like I get into the game and everything's just been stretched out for like 5 minutes at a time for each muscle group, I'm not gonna be able to run that fast.
Yep.
In 10 to 15 minutes, that effect will like kind of subside. But like static stretching, not the answer for injury prevention. Now, is there a place for it? Absolutely.
Yep.
Right? Yep. Yeah. If after the game, like, well, number one, if you like static stretching, go wild. Like, if it's something you enjoy doing, do it. Right? But like, certainly if you're limited in certain areas and you're restricted in mobility, static stretching can be a great adjunct in your just general movement program, right? And we won't get into too many specifics, but there's certain things you should be able to do, right? You should be able to lift your arms overhead. You should be able to squat down on the floor. You should be able to like bend over and, touch your toes or at least get close, right? There's certain things you should probably be able to do from a mobility standpoint. So if you can't do those things, address those things, right? But then it's also like resistance training. And I think resistance training is super important in whatever form that is, right? Whether that's like doing weights, you can do body weight resistance training. Like there's lots of things you can do, but basically taking your body through a full range of motion under load develops tons of resilience in those tissues, right? And the more you do that, the more resilient your body becomes those specific movements. So say, for example, someone has like knee pain with squatting, right? Eventually, squatting is kind of going to be preventative to prevent knee pain with squatting. Because if you never squat at all, right? Like say you're a parent, and you don't really work out much, I don't squat very much, whatever, I'm fine. Then you have a kid, and I have to squat down and pick things up all day. Eventually, my
What about if you're sitting on the ground holding the baby? What are you going to do? Are you going to put the baby down and then get up?
Well, yeah.
You're like, ooh, that's...
No, but like those...
Well, the baby's asleep.
I agree.
Like,
you got to do something.
You got to start working out.
Yeah. And so like those movements are going to be pretty much like preventative to prevent you from having pain in those movements down the road, right?
Yeah.
So in getting strong in those specific movement patterns, right? Your hinge, your squat, your push, your pull, getting strong in all of those specific functions under load is a huge thing, right? And just do that a couple times a week at minimum, like 2-3 times a week. Do a little bit of everything, or do some upper body this day, lower body this day, mix it up. However you want to do it is fine.
Yeah.
But getting mobility and then loading that mobility through a full range of motion is, I think, going to be the best thing you can do to prevent pain and prevent like dysfunction, or we'll say like disability down the road.
Yep. Awesome. All right, Carter. Well, all right. 30 seconds. If you were going to solve ACL tears, how would you do it?
Oh, dude, they've tried so hard. There's so much money in this industry too.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like they have tried for years. And there's so much research and there's so many programs. And you know what's happened with ACL injury rates? They've gotten worse.
Yeah.
It's like, so like, we still don't entirely know like the perfect way to prevent them. What we can say is there are certain risk factors, and certain populations are going to be, probably at higher risk, like females and female athletes, especially younger female athletes. But like a warm-up, or warm-up's not the right word. There are specific programs that you can do that have been shown to reduce ACL injury rates, right? It usually involves a few different things, right? It usually involves some kind of like functional movement pattern, squatting, lunging, jumping, stuff like that. It involves some kind of like proximal, and when I say proximal, it's like above the knee, right? So some kind of proximal strengthening that's like hip and core strengthening.
Yep.
And then maybe a little bit of balance training. The research is a little mixed on that. But doing those movement patterns, and there's some specifics on this, there's some new research on this, like at least 20 minutes for a full session,
Yep.
right? So at least 20-minute session. I want to say it's at least like 2 to 3 times a week, maybe.
Yeah.
And I said warm up to start because a lot of people do it as a warm up, these specific programs. And there's a few of them out there that you can look up. Like the FIFA 11 Plus is a good one, especially for like adolescent athletes. But some people just incorporate all that stuff into your warm up. And then it's like injury prevention plus your warm up. But it just has to be consistent.
Yep.
And it can't just be like a preseason thing. It has to be something you continue with throughout the entirety of your exercise participation. So that's really the best thing you can do in regards to prevention, right? And it runs along the same lines of strength and conditioning and all of those different things and improving your movement quality.
And what about hamstrings?
What about hamstrings?
I mean, strengthen your hamstrings, right? That's a simple, that's like an
sure.
easy thing. I mean, if you're like, oh, what do I do? You're like, like grab some dumbbells, do some slow RDLs. Because we talked about this before, but like 50% of the thigh is your hamstring. And
True.
So it's like,
True.
not a lot of folks are working out in your hamstrings.
Yeah.
Not to say it's a cure-all, but
No.
that's like an easy low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
To be like, you need to have a stronger posterior chain.
Posterior chain's big, agreed. Hamstring and like gluteal strength is huge, absolutely. Quad strength is a pretty big indicator of injury as well. So I agree, and I agree because those areas are more commonly maybe neglected in a treatment program, specifically like hip strengthening. I think things are getting better from what I've seen in athletics, specifically in like kids and stuff like that. But I agree that the posterior chain is very, very important. But other areas can't be forgotten either, like quads and little core muscles and like lots of things. But it goes back to those functional movement patterns, right? Can I squat? Right? Squat, maybe a little more like quad dominant movement, potentially, depending on how you squat.
Yeah.
Can I hinge, which is going to be posterior chain, right? Can I push? Can I pull, right? Are you getting all of those movements regularly in your exercise prescription or your workouts or whatever? If you are, you're probably in a good spot.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Carter. Well, you got anything else for us? Any one-liners to leave the folks
One-liners?
with?
Motion is lotion, baby.
Motion is lotion. That gets me every time.
That's a classic
That's so good.
PT-ism. Yeah, just keep your body moving, man. It's the best thing you can do.
Movement is medicine. Motion is lotion.
Motion is lotion, baby.
Right on. Thanks for coming on, man.
You got it.